Well, hello and greetings to everyone. Thank you for joining me today. Um, I'd like to just begin with a brief meditation, and usually when we do that, it brings a few more people in the door. So if you are able to, if you're in a position where you feel comfortable enough to sit and support yourself in any way you can, I'd like you to invite you to either close your eyes or just have a downward gaze and take a few moments to be present to your breath. Aware of breathing in and aware of breathing out. And as you breathe, notice where the breath lands in your body. And just focus your awareness on that place in your body where your breath lands. And it can be anywhere. There's no right or wrong for this. Just wherever it happens to land. And just focusing on that place in your body as you also focus on your breath. And as you inhabit your body, you may wish to just say to yourself the word here. Here. Here now. This body. This breath. This moment. Here. And just notice here. Notice the sensations, the feelings. And if there are thoughts coming and going, just simply notice. Nothing needs to be done with them. Nothing needs to be fixed. Just awareness. Just noticing now and being with it as best you can. And letting it be. And take a moment to just get in touch with what has brought you here now. The energy or whatever moved behind your decision to click the button to sign up for this webinar and be here now, in this body, in this moment, in this virtual community. And just settle into that whatever it is that gave rise to this moment for you. And honor that. Then take one more breath in and out. Let the next one just fall out. And then you can slowly open your eyes. Become aware of sitting here, watching your screen, listening. So this morning, as I took my morning walk, I noticed a little more lightness coming into my being. I felt my breath flowing a little more easily. And I felt a little more contented on the inside. And just a week ago, that wasn't the case. A week ago, I was dealing with a lot of emotions coming and going, mixed feelings. There were moments of being okay and feeling fine and dealing with what I had to deal with and being with what I had to be with. And there were moments when there were the usual twinges of fear. What's going to happen? Anxiety. How will I be? How will I deal with this? Those sorts of questions. And that kind of wanting, just that wanting to to fix it somehow, like to make it go away. But I think over the past week, the process has been one of being with those kinds of feelings, like getting in touch with them and letting them be there, giving them space, letting there be room for all the things that are going on inside and outside, and simply being present to them and noticing that urge to want to leap into action, but then stepping back from it and saying, no, let me just be with this, and then let me choose where to go with it. And so over the week, I think that process has brought me to a somewhat different place. And it's that kind of process that I want to share with you today. And there's a symbolization, a beautiful symbolic representation of this process. And it's actually the name of my work, Phoenix Rising. But the phoenix, the mythical bird, it's an Egyptian myth, I believe, but it's also been adopted by many cultures and is part of many cultures, many traditions. But the version of it that I know is this bird that is really all magnificent, all beautiful. And because of the situation or the time or what's happening, there's a need for change. And so the phoenix flies into this fire and is consumed by the fire. And at the end of the day, there's one tiny ember of remaining in the fire. And out of that ember is born a new phoenix. And it's a phoenix more beautiful, more wonderful than ever before. And that phoenix rises from the ashes, reborn and transformed and ready to embrace the new world, the new reality. And I think in a way, the pandemic that we're all experiencing is providing the conditions for that kind of transformation for each of us personally, and possibly also for our planet and for all of us. Remembering, I mentioned in my last talk, this is the first time probably in the history of humankind that we've all been present for the same event at the same time. In different ways, of course, but the same event is affecting all of us. And it's calling forth new ways of behavior, new ways of being that we've never experienced before. And when we're able to get to a place of saying yes to all of that, and then exploring how to be with all of that, a transformation happens. It has to, because we are letting go of the old and we are opening to the new. And I believe right now that's happening for many of us. You probably notice it in yourself, how you've changed over the last 3 weeks or month, or however long it's been for you. There's been changes on the inside, regardless of what's happening on the outside. And that's a transformational process. Real transformation, though, means that we really don't go back to being the same. And the reality is, of course, we can't. We can't go back to being the same. And after this is over, if that ever happens, and whenever that happens, it won't be the same. We'll be living in a new world, a different world. We will have also experienced ourselves differently during this time. So we'll be bringing a new us to that new world. And that new us, that new person that we bring to that new world, will have changed in some pretty wonderful ways if we're embracing the reality of now. Perhaps you've noticed yourself connecting more. Perhaps you've noticed yourself prioritizing more. What's really important in my life? Perhaps you've noticed yourself slowing down a bit. Perhaps you've noticed yourself being a little more present to yourself and doing a little more self-care. All of those things are sowing the seeds of change and transformation. And many of those things will stick because you'll have an experience of yourself, of the fruits of those things. How wonderful is it to connect with a loved one and to actually be present, even if it is on a screen, and to share what's really going on, and to connect deeply and live in the same reality. We're all doing this together. That changes people. At the same time, we have to get by. We have to do what we need to do each day. This practical life goes on. It'd be wonderful if we could sit in meditation all day, but we can't. So what are some of the things that we can engage that will support this process? And there's a process that I came across about, 2004, so however many years that is ago. And it was when I was reflecting on my work and on the people that I'd worked with over the years and the transformational processes that people had engaged. And I was writing a book at the time, and my editor asked me to consider some themes that might be appropriate for the book. And so I thought about that, and I thought, well, I'm going to choose the themes that I think play out to support people in the transformational process. The themes that kind of lay a foundation, if you like, and also lay out a little bit of a roadmap. And if they're engaged and embraced, they tend to make the process a little easier. So I'm going to go through those 8 themes, and I'll list them off first, and then I'll talk briefly about each of them, but I won't go into a lot of detail, and there is more detail available, and I'll let you know about that towards the end. So the 8 themes are, first of all, befriending your body, connecting with your body. Whenever we're involved in change or transformation or whatever's going on for us, our body is fully present, and our body is fully present almost in a neutral way. It's there free of the filters of our mind, and it can sense things and know things that our mind often can't get to. So in the work that I do, the body is an integral part of the transformational process. So if we're going to use it as a tool, we first have to get to know it and befriend it. So we have to take care of it to do that, and we have to connect with it to do that. So one of the things that I highly recommend, and I also practice, is a daily practice that in some way includes and involves my body. And it's a time to just be with that, not to try and use it as a tool at those times, but just to connect and to be with it, and to be present to it, and to be friends with it if I can, but also to notice the parts of me that disconnect from my body, because it's through noticing where I disconnect that I have opportunity then for greater connection. So the way I do this, and there's many different ways you can do it, many different practices, disciplines, ways of connecting to your body. The simple way is just to stand, breathe, and notice. That's pretty easy, right? You can also practice yoga, beautiful way to connect with your body. But again, make sure it's about your body and not about your mind, because you can practice yoga and stay in your head for the whole practice. Am I getting my knees to the right position? Am I going to ever be able to touch my toes? Am I ever be able to do this chakrasana just the way my teacher does? Right? So you can practice yoga like that. You can go through a whole hour of practice like that if you want. Or you can just simply connect with your body. Be present to your body. Notice your body. Notice how it feels. Notice the resonance. Notice the sensations. And just notice. And notice also when your judging mind comes in, and use that as an opportunity to let it go. So that's a great way to connect with your body too. Meditation connects with your body if it's a mindfulness meditation using the body as a focus. Breath is part of the body. Breath is body experience. So every time you connect with your breath and notice your breath in your body, you're connecting with your body. You're befriending your body. So meditation is also great. And in meditation, I'd suggest using one that's basically basic breath meditation, at least to begin with. A recent study showed that if we meditate for just 7 minutes a day, It will change our life. Wharton study, if you want to look it up. And so I highly recommend both, actually. In fact, all of these I would highly recommend. But if you can only pick one, it might be a walk. It might be some other kind of physical discipline or physical practice that you like. I know someone who swims every day, for example, and his swim is a meditation for him. So there's lots of different ways to do it. The important thing, though, is that the body is the focus, and that means not your mind. There's nothing wrong with your mind, of course, nothing wrong with our minds at all, but we live there most of the time. Why do we want to take those to our body practice? The same thing happens if you put the earbuds in when you go for your morning walk. What are you doing? Are you really connecting with your body in the moment, or are you off somewhere listening to some news broadcast or something else? Music's okay if the music connects to your body, but it's really about your body. That's the primary thing, befriending your body. So the second one is awareness. And awareness is bandied around a lot. It means a lot of things to different people. To me, there's two facets or two aspects to awareness. There's awareness that's external and awareness that's internal. And there's a big difference. Most of us spend most of our time with external awareness, and we think that's being aware. And that is part of awareness. It's true. We do have to know what's happening out there. It's part of the landscape. But even more important is, how is what's happening out there connecting to what's happening in here? And noticing that. That's another level of awareness. And it's an important level of awareness. And the practices that I just mentioned, that's really the second part of it. After you've got connected to your body, the next thing you can do is become more aware of what's happening as you're connecting. And then if that's part of your practice and part of what you bring to life, then when you go out into the world in whatever way you do, or when you watch the news or whatever you engage, you're making dinner and you're noticing your mind, you can also notice, what am I aware of in my body right now? What am I aware of on the inside? What am I feeling about that? And the quickest way we have to usually get out of things that disturb us in our mind is to dismiss them, to resist them, to run away from them, or to hide from them. And all of those things work short term, but they don't have a great effect long term. And if we really want to use our life as a transformational process, which it can be, it really helps if we can connect what's going on here with what's going on here. So awareness, becoming more aware. Mindfulness meditation, great practice. Yoga with a mindful approach, great practice. That's the training ground. That helps us connect to that process, engage that process, and then begin to apply it in our world. The third of the 8 themes is acceptance. But acceptance doesn't just mean putting up with things. It doesn't mean, oh, well, I better accept that, can't change it, so yeah, whatever. Yeah. That's not acceptance. That's acquiescence. Acceptance is when we really sit with it, fully feel it, fully embrace it, and say, yes, and there's room for this too. There's room for this too in my experience. In some ways, it's almost like watching a sunrise. The sun's rising. This is happening. There's room for this too. If it's about you, this feeling is coming up in my body. This thought is going through my mind. This impatience is here right now. This distraction is here right now. Yeah, there's room for that too. Accept it. That doesn't mean you have to change it immediately, but it gives you the room when you can sit with it a little while to be able to say from a more focused place and a more calm place, what do I choose? How do I choose to be with this? What do I choose to do with that? And that's the next thing. So after awareness comes choice. How do I choose to be with what is happening now? Now, one of the things we often do is leap into action. We're really good at that. Back many, many years ago, I lived in Papua New Guinea. And I got to know that culture fairly well. And I had several of my students, or most of my students, were from villages in the remote areas of the country. And I got to know some of them through visiting with them in their villages. And at times, whenever the elders had to have a discussion to choose some course of action, they would sit together under a tree in the shade because it was hot, and they would sit, and no one would say anything. And they would sit, and they would sit for a long time. And then eventually someone would speak, and they would sit again. After a little time, someone else would speak, and they would sit again. And by the end of the day, usually they would all together somehow speak, and a decision would be made. And the decision was really easy to implement because everyone was kind of on board for it, and everyone was kind of involved, at least the elders were, and it happened. And that was a different way of decision making than I ever seen in my life before. But what it was giving space to making choices. Now, we don't have to give it a day, but a little bit of time, a little bit of a pause before we act. There's a saying that is sometimes attributed to Viktor Frankl, but I'm not really sure who said it. And it goes like this: between every stimulus and response, there is a pause. And in that pause is a moment to choose. And often the wisest choices are made with taking a pause. So the fifth theme is discernment. Discernment is upping the stakes on choice and upping the stakes on awareness. Discernment is finely tuned awareness, but finely tuned awareness to the extent that it could provide insight. Insight means, in a sense, wisdom. So discernment is kind of like that. And where does that come from? Well, wisdom isn't about doing the same thing all the time because you're following the rules. Wisdom is about knowing what to do when, because it fits the situation. So discernment is pretty complex. It means taking everything in, all the different variables, sitting with it, choosing, revising the choices based on criteria. And the key criteria are: is this going to be helpful to me and others? Is this going to cause suffering for me or others? And depending on the answers to those questions, a discerned choice can be made, or a wise choice. So that's discernment, a lot to discernment. After discernment, we come to truth. So once we get to know ourselves better, and once we get to sit with all the things that are going on internally, externally, and we can get to a place where we can be with everything. We can be with everything. We can kind of like get to know everything, and we can get to know our part in it. Where do we fit with all of this? Like right now, where do you sit with the pandemic? What's your piece in this? What is your truth within you calling forth from you? How to be with this? I'm here right now on this webinar because this is one of the things that's being called forth from me. I'm being called forth to be present and share some of the things that may be helpful to others. That's my truth. It's my truth that ever since I taught my first class 50-something years ago, I've always been a teacher. And my gift is to support others through teaching. So my truth is, given what's happening here, here's a way I can contribute. Here's a way I can give. Here's a way I can be present to it all, but I can also be supportive and helpful. You probably have one of those for you too. What's being called for from your truth? And you're going to know that truth even more clearly when you also engage the other themes that I mentioned. When you're befriending your body, being more aware, being able to accept, being able to choose, being able to discern, then there's a resonance that comes alive with that truth that is within each of us. Some people call it your Dharma. What's your Dharma? What's your path? And then the next one is truth in action. How do we take this truth and take it to the world and act in it in some way. Now, my suggestion with that is small steps. I have a little meditation practice or a little practice that I do at the end of all of my practices every morning. And it's simply putting my hand on my chest and asking myself something like, I vary the questions, but it might be, what's being called forth today? What's important today? What matters? How do I show up today? Yeah. So that's an important one. And then take one of those little things, just trying to fine tune it down to just one thing. It might be connecting. It might be some old friends that I haven't connected with for a while and I'm thinking of. And connection is really important to me in my world. Part of my truth is I want to connect. So I'll reach out, connect. Or it might be doing something, a service, an act of loving kindness for some other person, some other human being. So that's truth in action. And then finally, we get to flow. That's the juicy theme. That's the nice one. And what is flow? Well, life doesn't just flow all the time. But if you can imagine yourself sitting and watching a sunset and having nothing to do and nowhere to go, and just being present to that, and it's a beautiful day, and you feel at peace, and life just seems okay. Everything seems to be falling into place, regardless of all the stuff that's going on. And so those moments can arise when we're mindfully engaging life and putting into action some of the other themes that I mentioned. How do you know if you're in flow? Well, often in flow in life, if we're flowing in life, there's less jerky transition times. You know how you have to go from one thing to the next, and it's like, oh, it doesn't feel right. It feels like there's a pull there. You know? When you're in flow, that doesn't happen because you're shifting more easily. Also, you'll still have your highs and your lows. There'll still be peaks and valleys, but they won't be as deep. The peaks won't be as high and the valleys won't be as deep. And they'll tend to blend into each other a little more. And also, the bumps in the road won't throw you off your bicycle. That's the other thing that happens when you're in flow. And it's not that difficult to get there, but in order to get there, there's other things that need to be in place. And those are some of the things that I've mentioned and some of the ways that you might be able to support yourself and others in getting there. For those of you who are health professionals, all of these things are wonderful gifts to be able to engage. I like to engage them experientially with my clients as their way of learning it and incorporating it into their life. So I hope that has helped you. I want to leave with one final piece, and that is, I heard a podcast this morning, and the handshake is a thing of the past, and the new normal of, and particularly if you're wearing a mask and you can't have a facial expression, how do you greet people? How do we greet each other now that we don't have the handshake and we have to wear the mask? And believe it or not, most of the world is reverting to this one. I honor you, and I am pleased to have been with you and share this time with you. We do have time for questions, so if you'd like to type them into the chat, I'll hopefully be able to read and respond. And thank you for being here. Thank you, Rebecca. Oh, one of the things I didn't mention is where you can get more on this. I do have a book, and it's called Turn Stress into Bliss. It will be republished again soon, but there's still some copies left. And also you can get more resources on the 8 themes and things like that at my website, michaelleeyoga.com, and also the Phoenix Rising website, PRYT.com. I don't know, someone asked about EFT and tapping. I don't know much about it, but it certainly sounds like to me it's a way of connecting with your body. And through that through that tapping motion and whatever, is going to have an effect, a similar effect. I didn't talk about the science or the physiology of any of the things I mentioned today, but there is a science behind them. And yeah, I think that probably has similar effects, and I think it's probably a useful practice. Do you think you have to rigidly have a daily practice? I'm a mum, I have a little one, so challenged. Here's the answer to that. A daily practice. I would say yes, a daily practice, but it doesn't have to be long and it doesn't have to get in the way, right? So my suggestion is even if you can find 10 minutes, that's all you got to find, 10 minutes. But the important thing is that it's every day. Every day is important, okay? It builds over time. So if you can, any kind of practice that you can engage, even if it's only for 10 minutes. Yeah, we are offering the Phoenix Rising Essentials course online. There's one coming up in May, and we're planning one pretty much every month through the fall. You can find out more about that at PIYT.com, Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy. We are offering that now as an online course. We did our first one a couple of weeks ago, and it was great. And I'm all for doing some more. Thank you from Kate in Bristol, Vermont. Yeah, keep showing up, Philippa. That's awesome. Thank you. And Christine saying she's going to integrate those steps in her daily practice. Good for you. Good. Best wishes with it. Oh, Susan, back in 1998. Thank you. Good to reconnect. Yeah, acceptance and resistance go together. Pretty much we do both. And so the question is, if I can notice that, if I can notice my resistance and notice my acceptance, that's going to help me make a wiser choice, right? There certainly are times when resistance is called forth, but oftentimes resistance will stop the flow, particularly if that resistance comes from things like fear or a sense of unease. So resistance will give rise to this sense of unease, and then we can ask ourselves, now, where is that sense of unease coming from? And then we can choose. There's no right or wrong here, right? If you feel there's a time to resist and you want to resist, then go for it. You know, there's definitely a time for that. But it's just a matter of whether you're making the choice or the choice is being made for you without you being really conscious and aware. More about the distinction between acceptance and choice. Yeah, choice isn't only about deciding what to do. Choice is also at deciding how to be. So once something comes up and we're accepting the reality that we're in now. Okay, choice is really, so before I even decide what I'm going to do, how am I going to be with this? You know, do I want to be anxious about this? Do I want to be panicked about it? Or do I want to step back from it and just take it in and be with it, right? How do I want to choose to be with those around me with this? You know, in our household, for example, we're choosing to only look at the news for about half an hour a day because it disturbs the household if we do more than that. You know? That's a choice, because that's a choice of how to be with this. When we do want the information, but we don't want it, you know, all day. So, you know, there's, more to choice than there is to acceptance. Choice is like moving into some way of being with what is. So acceptance is just saying, okay, it's here. Now the next step is, okay, how I want to be with this, what I want to do with this. Yeah, there's many different, Rebecca asked about different yoga therapy programs. There's many out there. Do your homework. Check it out wisely. There's many good ones. In fact, any that are I-AYT certified are usually gone through a process. So there's some quality there. But Yeah, do your research. But one of the things I'd suggest too is talk to a graduate, talk to someone who's actually taken a program and ask them about it. That would be better than me, because I'm going to give you a biased opinion. Our program specifically focuses on the transformational aspects of yoga therapy. So we're about taking people from one state of being to another state of being and through a process to get there. Does it work for symptom management too? Yeah, of course it does, because on the way you get to do some of that. But primarily it's about helping people get to another place. Yeah, I'm coming to the UK again in 2021 if traveling is happening back again there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to my return to the UK. And I'm being sponsored, I believe, by, yeah, it's Yoga United. So if you know Yoga United, Judy Sampath is my sponsor for the UK, and I'll be there next year. Anything else? Am I missing any questions? I think that's about it. And someone's raising their hand, Mona. Let me see. I can't see your hand. I'm not on that view. Wonder if you could type it into the chat, Mona. Maybe that's why you've raised your hand. You can't type it in the chat, I know. Okay, here we go. Question and answers. I'll go there. Yeah, okay. I see you typing, Mona. Okay, great. And thank you, Valerie, for thanking me. One of the things you mentioned there was, I think this is a time for generosity, and I want to pay tribute to all the people in HealthFlix who've put this program on. Two of my good friends and colleagues, Heather Mason, Matthew Taylor, several other people that I know of, have joined together to make this available to you and to bring people like me and others to the platform to share with you. And that act of generosity, I think, is really something I'm in awe of at this time, because it's something that I think has been needed. Some of the other speakers on this series that I've looked at their talks, and including Matthew's and Heather's, great stuff. There's a lot of wisdom that is being brought to bear here at a time when we really need inspiration and wisdom. So I could not say I want to be part of that. I really am very delighted to be part of that. And I'm very delighted to be able to serve in this way. Still waiting for Mona's question. Online, someone asked about online classes. Yeah, I have a Monday night class. It's Monday in Eastern USA, Monday at 6 p.m. And that's through ompractice.com. Ompractice, O-O-M practice, all one word.com. And it's 6 o'clock on Monday nights, every Monday. And it's a class that is based on the Phoenix Rising method and using a transformational approach to yoga. Someone's asking, how do I push through knowing the wise choice, but still making the wrong choice? Head versus habit. It's tough. Oh, so it is. Yes, habit is hard. Habit's a tough one. All right. So you have to, first of all, I think one of the prerequisites is to really be compassionate with yourself. Your habit has probably served you. Your habit has probably taken away the pain in some way, taken away the suffering, taken away the discomfort. So rather than push through, it's better to step back, metaphorically, step back and see if you can connect with that urge or that pain or suffering or that whatever it is, that thing that you're trying to get rid of. Like I know people who basically have a habit with that they have to drink certain things or eat certain things, and that, you know, like whenever I sit and watch TV, and this is not me, but I'm talking about, you know, you might want to sit and eat popcorn every time you watch TV, and you don't want to eat popcorn. It's a habit. So there's nothing wrong with the popcorn, but what's really underneath that? What's the urge? What's the driving force? And then make a choice. You still might eat the popcorn, but at least you know a little more about where the choice is coming from. Trying to kill a habit doesn't really work. You can't just get a stick and beat it to death. You have to actually get to understand what's going on underneath it and then choose from that place. How to deal with anger that arises from misinformation and environmental policy rollbacks. Yeah. So we live in an imperfect world, and definitely we have imperfect people at times running our world, and we have to find a way to be with that. One of the ways is to get angry, but I mean, the question then is, does that do anything? And that anger, by the way, is coming from a deep sense of love. Underneath that anger, you're coming from such a loving nature deep underneath it that you're wanting to create something better for the world. And so it's coming from a creative energy, and anger can turn it into a negative energy. So I would go back to that source again, go back to the source of love from which that anger is arising, and see if there's another way to express that in the world. And also, there is a degree of acceptance here as well. We're probably powerless in some ways to change things, but there are certain things we can do. So it's about do what you can and leave what you can't. And also then find another way to express that wonderful energy that's already there. Oh, that was Mona's question. Okay. Stressful to meditate and practice yoga and finding purpose in all of this. Yeah, sometimes I just want to lie down and don't think. Lie down. Take some time to lie down. That's important too, you know. And after you've lied down for a while and you know, say, okay, so now maybe I can sit for a few minutes. Maybe I can sit for a few breaths. Even if you can just sit for a few minutes and take a few breaths, I'm pretty sure it can shift your energy. And then notice what it does. Like if you do something, just do it once. Notice how you feel. And then if it feels good, feels better, try it again and again and again. But don't feel like you got to push yourself. This is not a time to get, you know, to sort of, you know, take a whole new regimen on and be very disciplined and all of that kind of stuff. This is a time to be really gentle with yourself. Self-compassion, self-love come first. Then, okay, how do I want to be with this? What's going to support that self-love and self-compassion? And if you get a sense that sitting down and meditating for 10 minutes will help that, then it's a great practice to engage. My favorite sutta of the Buddha is the Kalama Sutta, which he says, where he says, don't believe anything, don't the scriptures, the texts, the teachers, or any of that, don't go for any of that unless it actually fits with your reality. Got to go. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful day.